Hey there, and welcome back to another Miraculous Ladybug Season 2 Retrospective review, where we go through older episodes of Miraculous we never made videos on and give our thoughts. Today is actually a pretty big one, the first part of Queen's battle, Style Queen. This is right in the midst of what at the time felt like the Chloe redemption tour, and so I have no doubt there's going to be some salt today because there always is when this type of thing crops up. Even to this day, it's probably still the most controversial element of the show ever. I don't see that changing anytime soon either, so with all that being said, it's time to jump into things. The episode begins with a look at the news announcing a massive fashion show at the Grand Palais for the Gabriel Agreste brand. Once again, I find it very hilarious to watch the older seasons and see those dated visuals. Here we have characters who are meant to be big celebrities and who are walking the red carpet in the most casual of clothes. In this era of the show, you'd have them wear different clothes for this sort of thing, but back in the day, it was pretty clear that the budget would only allow them to have one character model and that'd be it. It really seems as if they blew their episode budget on Adrien's custom suit. It's so crazy to see how far we've come, although just the other day I saw a post talking about how the old style's so much better and they wish it was never changed. Whenever somebody says something like that, I always think to myself, are you sure? Are you really sure? Take off the nostalgia goggles, please. Marinette's getting ready to attend the show with Adrien modelling the bowler hat that she'd made for Gabe's competition in an earlier episode and that Chloe previously tried to steal. And now she has a pretty bad case of the yips. And I think that's fair enough, right? Prior to this, she'd been a nobody in the world of fashion, and now her hat's going to be a featured piece modelled by Adrien, the boy she's crushing on, and seemingly one of the most famous models in the world. It's a lot of exposure, it's being televised, and big-name critics are going to be there. It's a lot to take in, and I too would be shitting my pants. We cut over to the show, and we see Audrey get out of her car, and see one of the biggest reasons as to why Chloe is the way she is. Her mum truly sucks, and I honestly had forgotten just how bad she was. When she gets out of the car, she gets Andre's name wrong initially, calling him Anthony, and then demanding that he ensure Gorilla gets fired for poor driving.
Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth!
She complains there's a red carpet at the red carpet event, and that it should have been made of red marble instead like she specified, and for this offence, she tells Officer Roger that he too is fired, as if some random policeman working security at a big event is going to have been involved in choosing the red carpet. And on she goes. She shit-talks Nadia's clothing during her interview live on TV, whilst also getting Chloe's name wrong and trying to fire her when she gives her a gift that has the wrong wrapping paper or something like that. Yikes. She's also clearly not happy to be here in Paris with them and claims that she's going to be staying for the shortest possible time. We see here that Chloe's just trying to mimic her mum to try to earn some sort of affection, and when she does something genuinely kind, she ends up getting slapped down extremely publicly. You cannot tell me that they always had the idea to have her fail her redemption arc when they were including stuff like this to try to make her so sympathetic, as well as things like Zombie Zoo and her moment with Miss Bustier there. I try not to go on and on about this topic for the most part because in the end, it doesn't change anything and it is what it is, but seeing as we're going to be going back to old content, I can dust off my old opinions too and complain to my heart's content. I do find it funny here though that Marinette completely buys into the hype surrounding Audrey and her opinions on fashion. Despite Audrey being worse than Chloe in every respect and it being obvious that Marinette would never take Chloe seriously with her opinions on her work and Gabe himself thinking the hat looks great, she's all too willing to try to conform to what she thinks Audrey's going to like. It's kind of crazy because she's trying to change the hat, which Gabe hand-picked and I presume is going to pay Marinette for, and change it to suit the taste of the editor of a magazine. A big-name critic, true, but just a single critic nonetheless. Imagine Gabe's reaction if she turned up with the hat suddenly covered in glitter. Goodbye fashion show, and honestly good chance she'd end up being akumatized in the wake of all this. Marinette runs into Audrey and she thinks their interaction didn't go so well, which leads to her having a bit of a meltdown when she meets Adrien to hand over the hat. This is such a cute little scene, I have to say. Perfectly constructed. They have Marinette being awkward and clumsy and stumbling over her words, but they don't push it to the extreme. They have cute moments like bumping heads where they go to pick up the hat at the same time, and then Marinette opens up about how she's self-conscious about the hat and that it's going to be a complete failure, with Adrien then reassuring her that's not the case, and everything will be fine. After all, both Adrien and his dad think the hat's great, and that's what matters the most. Then when he does a faux catwalk to show off the hat for her and prove it looks good, he gets all embarrassed when Marinette compliments him, which proves there is something there, even if he is obsessed with Ladybug at present. I can't believe it takes 3 seasons after this for the ship to set sail. This brings us to the fashion show itself, which is once again hampered by the budget, methinks. For the big show of a titan of fashion, there's almost nobody of note there. There's only enough people to fill up the front row of the catwalk, and a huge chunk of them are seemingly from Adrien's class. Once again, this is probably due to budget issues, which I guess is also why Lila is slapped in the background of a couple of shots, and why XY or whatever his name is randomly bald. But yes, tell me how the animation is so much better and suits the show more. Audrey makes her way to her seat, complaining all the while about having to sit with the rabble, only to be told by Natalie that she does have a reserved seat in the second row. She freaks out and rants about how she discovered Gabe and he can't do this, and then tries to fire Natalie. She calls Gabe, but he ignores the call with the intention of akumatizing her, whilst Natalie unleashes some premium snark about how I guess this means she isn't fired after all. I feel like this whole sequence gets even funnier when you realize they're all in the same top secret society. That Audrey would surely know Gabe is Hawkmoth, and Gabe would know that she knows, and yet he's fully willing to push her buttons like this anyway. I suppose he could claim that he was justified because he was trying to get the Miraculous and he thought that she'd make a powerful akumatized villain, but it's still very funny to me. She of course storms off and Gabe transforms into Hawkmoth to turn her into Style Queen. However, when she arrives at the show again powered up, she doesn't seem to know that Gabe is Hawkmoth, so does this mean she isn't part of the secret council after all? However, if that's the case, how's she going to be able to get her oldest kid into the group? Well, the oldest kid that we know of. This woman seems to love having secret kids. We know that Madame Sarugi already knew before she came to Paris what Gabe was up to. Is this just one of those things that I shouldn't think too hard about? Probably. I think it's pretty clear that a good chunk of the writing back then was in the vein of making it up as you go along, as opposed to having every single little thing mapped out all at once. As she's getting akumatized, Adrien's out modeling Marinette's piece. I can't believe that somehow Nino of all people was able to book a gig DJing this event, by the way. Doesn't feel like something Gabe would ever greenlight, but there you go. Style Queen appears and demands that Gabe comes out, and when Adrien rather bravely stands up to her and says that Gabe isn't there, she decides to settle for Junior. So now Adrien's out of the game, and Plag's freaking out because now there's no way for Adrien to transform and help out Ladybug, so it's going to be a pure 1 versus 1. Now this is one of those moments where it'd be very easy to look back and say, oh, surprise, surprise, Cat Noir being sidelined once again, yada yada yada. It's the Ladybug show and the writers don't care about Adrien, etc, etc. Especially with how the Chloe arc ends up going, I could see why people would be bitter, and indeed it would eventually get really old as they started doing this type of thing more and more as the show would progress. That being said, Adrien being sidelined and regularly made to look like he doesn't matter beyond being a romantic endgame wasn't really happening as a major trend during season 2. Yes, it did start to happen then, but not in the same way, and in the end, this does clear room for what at the time was a really intriguing storyline where Chloe ends up getting a Miraculous, which was another interesting step in her long-term story. That being said, this episode is retroactively made less good simply because we know Miracle Queen's coming, and then there's all the other shit Chloe does that's on the horizon. Marinette powers up into Ladybug, and Andre actually tries to talk Audrey down. He's not a good person by any means, but hey, he was pretty brave here. He gets turned to gold as well, and then Style Queen turns on Chloe, who avoids the same fate by behaving exactly as her mother wants her to. She becomes a sycophant, offering to be her brand new personal assistant. Ladybug swoops in and they have their first clash, and I actually thought this was really well put together because it makes Style Queen look impressive and thus Hawkmoth look good for choosing somebody so negative they'd be massively powerful. It makes Ladybug look really vulnerable and at risk in this monster of the week era where she always comes out on top no matter what, and that's something you really needed. It also makes Cat Noir's absence mean something because Ladybug lasts less than 20 seconds before she gets overpowered, and since Cat Noir isn't there, he can't do his usual thing where he swoops in to help that initial barrage before Lady starts to figure out some tactics. This in turn sets the stage for Chloe to show that she's rather cunning and resourceful, coming up with a plan on the fly to take Style Queen to Gabe's mansion to prevent Ladybug being utterly defeated so early on. Style Queen then steals Adrien, and a Father of the Year moment from Gabe right here letting all of this happen, by the way, and she takes Chloe to the mansion where Gabe's nowhere to be found. So I guess she legitimately just doesn't know that it's him. Once again, I ask the question, is she even on the secret council then, or is she not? Maybe she isn't, and thus her son infiltrating it is a big deal, and she's going to be yet another player in the game trying to get their hands on the Miraculouses. It could also just be a little plot hole they don't really care about though, and fair enough, I suppose. Sometimes those little details need to be looked past simply because otherwise, things wouldn't make much sense. Hawkmoth tells Style Queen that Gabe is being hidden by Ladybug, and thus she needs to fight Ladybug and get her Miraculous to ensure that Gabe comes out of hiding to rescue Adrien. It's a bit of a smooth brain move here from Gabe, to be honest. He only uses his telepathy to tell Style Queen this when she goes to the mansion to find Gabe. It probably would have been a good idea to say this when she was kicking Ladybug's ass at the fashion show and had her all but dead to rights until Chloe interfered and distracted her by suggesting they go to find Gabe in the first place. Ugh, the dude can't resist self-sabotaging his best plans, can he? If there's a will, there's a way, and Gabe will always find a way to lose. Off Style Queen goes to the place that all the best villain fights seem to occur, the Eiffel Tower. Before Ladybug arrives though, a couple of story threads of note. In what seems to have been no time at all, Alia has ran from the Grand Palais to the Eiffel Tower. It seems she came here with a purpose too, she wasn't just running away. She knew inevitably the villain would turn up here. I guess she also has noticed that most of the villain battles end up happening in a couple of locations. At the same time, we see Chloe actually genuinely becoming a heroic character. She's trying to get her mum to free Adrien, and at the same time helps out Ladybug when she arrives by giving her important information. I gave myself free rein to talk about this earlier in the video, so I'll say it here. Look how they massacred my girl. It is a completely different person, and you can't tell me this is somehow her putting on an act or something equally absurd. I honestly do wonder how this Chloe would have fit into the future storylines and the modern show in general. Style Style Queen catches them and Chloe's turned to gold, which once again leaves Ladybug on her own, calling for backup from Catwire to no avail. Ladybug and Style Queen square off yet again, and Ladybug is still no match. Style Queen's made of glitter and reforms her body every time she gets attacked. Hell, even the power of the Miraculous knows that she has no hope, and her lucky charm tells her to run away and go find Master Fu. Here we get a really cool scene where Marinette meets Plague for the first time ever, so it's a pretty historic moment, and then Plague and Fu throw Cat Noir under the bus by calling him an irresponsible Miraculous user who lost the ring of the cat, which seems a bit harsh. At the same time though, it's not like they can just tell the truth and say Style Queen already got him, because that would put him at risk of Marinette puzzling out his secret identity. Even if she doesn't want to figure it out, it would inevitably lead to her having suspicions all the same. There's only so many people that got caught. Plague then says that without Cat Noir, it's just him that can help, prompting Fu to get very stern, telling him there's no chance he's going to be allowed to get involved because his power's too strong unless channeled by a wielder. Fu references the sinking of Atlantis, the leaning nature of the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and then the extinction of the dinosaurs. Whoops. I am curious as to how the hell he managed to do that last one though. What was he trying to do? He said he went too far, so what was it? Was he just trying to kill some of them? Without the help of the cat, Fu reveals that instead Marinette must choose a different ally, and since she needs help actually hitting Style Queen, she chooses the bee. She goes off to give it to Alia, who like an idiot is sneaking up the Eiffel Tower to film Style Queen. How the hell does Ladybug also even know she's there though? Like the exact location should be. Oh well. Don't think too hard about it, smarty pants. For some reason, Ladybug didn't realize Style Queen could see her coming, and so when she's slowly trying to give Alia the Miraculous, it gives time for Style Queen to come to try to ambush her, with Ladybug only being saved by Alia sacrificing herself and pushing Ladybug out of the way. My god, this episode, man, it's just filled with so many twists and turns. It really was next level for its day, and stuff like this really cemented the show's popularity. Ladybug drops the Bee Miraculous and it tumbles over the edge of the tower and leads to Ladybug having a fight alone. She lucky charms some glue and is back on the run over to Adrien's Snow White cosplay, where she desecrates a flag by smearing it with glue, and by doing so, is able to chip away at Style Queen's glitter body. Once again, here we have peak writing, because the story sets her up to have this big triumphant hero moment where she proves that she didn't need help and is the big shot hero, but then she outright loses. She gives it her best try and did do some damage, but in the end, Style Queen's too much for her, and she's about to be defeated yet again, which forces Plague to come in out of nowhere and hit a Cataclysm to save the day, and I can't tell you how hyped this scene was back in the day, and it still holds up. I wonder how good it would look in the new animation style though. That would be pretty awesome. Ladybug cleanses the Akuma and reverses everything, although I do wonder why she didn't get the Bee Miraculous back from this, as usually that sort of thing is fixed by the Miraculous Ladybug power. She also somehow forgets to think about this and instead takes Adrien back to the fashion show, whilst Chloe is once again ignored by her mum, who calls her casserole. Absurd. Her getting Chloe's name wrong at first has been a running gag across the episode, and I do have to wonder, is she simply that stupid, which feels unlikely, or is this a massive power move? If so, my god. Can't believe they framed Chloe as the bad egg in one season's time. Back at the Grand Play, we get some very rare Ladrien content for those that partake in that ship, and then Tiki reveals that her power didn't work on the Bee Miraculous and they have to go back and get it. Whoopsie! This allows Chloe to pick it up and take it home, and sets up the events of the second part, which we'll get to at some point, I'm sure. My god, it's crazy how good Miraculous was back in the day, right? I love it again now, but it really did go through a decline era, didn't it? To go from this, which is so well written, to the likes of Miracle Queen, what a downfall. I'm actually so keen to see if Queen Wasp also holds up just as well, and so with all that being said, these have been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the episode? Did you like it? Hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.